Yarok the Desecrated lands matter versus Breya Etherium Shaper. We are going to keep this one. If we are in some really dire straits, we can go for a skull clamp onto the Lotus Cobra. But I'd obviously rather not do that. And speaking of skull clamp, our opponent gets one down straight away. Let's just go for a tapped shock and pass the turn straight over. We want to save our fetches for when Lotus Cobra is in play because we can net mana off of those. Inquisition of Kozilek may well get rid of our Lotus Cobra, and it does. Alright, now that they know that we have the Skull Clamp in hand, we might as well play it. If they've got removal in hand, then it will encourage them to use it at least. We'll go in for a Kodama's Reach next turn, and then our Yarok after that. And Thoughtseize goes after our Kodama's Reach, so we are officially in top deck mode. Yeah, just getting into lands, unfortunately. They know about the swamp in our hand, so we will play that. They know about all the cards in our hand, apart from the snow-covered forest, so we will wait to play that as long as we can. Well, they're still missing two of their colours at least. Oh, there's an Ancient Tomb that gets us straight into our commander, so that's a lucky top deck. Might well be that our opponent has removal. And going for a Tainted Pact, looking for some counter magic off of that. That resolved very quickly, much faster than Tainted Pact usually does. So I don't know if that was a misclick or not. Going in for some red mana on the Rakdos Signet, and then this may well be a Terminate. Nope, it's a Vindicate onto our commander. Let's get down the Reliquary Tower. And we'll just go for the Solemn now. I don't care about getting two basic lands off of a Solemn. Especially when we don't have Lotus Cobra in play. Grab ourselves an island because we have a forest in hand. And then we'll put Clamp on the Solemn and pass the turn over. Getting into blue mana off of the Signet, so that means that we can see Brea come into play here. And Brea is likely going to Clamp the Thopters. We haven't gotten into any removal yet, unfortunately. Oh, and a Braid. Oh, that's shocking. We're going to draw 3 cards here. I thought our opponent would definitely get their commander down. Just more lands, unfortunately. Obnixilis the Fallen, I don't mind. Let's get down Obnixilis the Fallen. Oh wow, and there is a counterspell, so that is our opponent out of cards. Counter a spell, unless its controller pays 1 for each basic land type amongst lands you control. They've got 2 land types, so that means that we can actually pay for this. Yeah, I thought our opponent had countered there, but they didn't manage to. Let's... instead of the Clamp, we'll go for the Miri's Guile. And we'll definitely point the 3 life loss at our opponent. It would be nice to put the Skull Clamp onto the Obnixilis, because if our opponent does go for all that card draw, then it's likely that they'll get into removal. Yeah, definitely seeing Brea here. 1 mana floating will most likely clamp something. They'll only have 1 mana held up though, if they go for a single clamp. Well, there's the first one. They've got a mana floating. And the second clamp, so they've got 5 cards in hand now, managing to make a land drop. May well go for the Tectonic Edge onto the blue land that they will no doubt go for with that. In fact, they'll probably get an Izzet land. And this is exactly the reason that I wait to crack my fetches at the end of my opponent's turn, because, yeah, with them doing that now, that actually might dictate whether or not we go for Tectonic Edge this turn over the Gaia's Cradle. Now then, we've got a Harrow there. Yeah, making a bunch of land drops is our means out of this, I think. But Assassin's Trophy being out of play would be really good as well. If we get Yarok into play, it'll be 3, 6, 9, 12 off of Harrow. And then 6 off of Misty, which is 18. Yeah, let's go for Harrow here. I don't like getting rid of Assassin's Trophy, but I think that's what we have to do here. Yarok is going to be 7, I think. Yeah, so we're going to have to drop the Gaia's Cradle, I think, actually. Instead of the Misty Rainforest. Alright, well let's just see if our opponent lets some damage through here. They might not mind recasting their commander. No, they are going for taking the damage, so I think we can get a win off here. Down comes our Yarok. We'll play Gaia's Cradle, because that will generate 2 mana. And then we go Harrow, sacrifice a forest. We'll get a forest and another forest into play. And that takes our opponent down to -2, because from each landfall trigger, with Yarok and Obnixilis in play, our opponent loses 6 life, and that takes them down to -2. I think if they get to untap there, they potentially could have done a lot of stuff to ruin our day. What 3 cards did we have on top? Well, we had Primeval Titan, so assuming that they weren't going to counter that, then we could have gotten our Field of the Dead combination of cards on the go. Thankfully, we managed to get out from underneath Breya, Etherium Shaper, and managed to get it done fairly quickly. Yarok the Desecrated, Lands Matter, versus Narset Enlightened Master, my favourite commander to play against. Yeah, we'll keep that. We've got Ramping Wood Elves and Harrow, which we can get into on turn 2 thanks to the Ancient Tomb. And then we've even got Urborg so that we don't have to put too much life into Ancient Tomb. So, yeah, looking pretty good there. We'll grab ourselves a Breeding Pool with the Misty Rainforest. Should really wait for a turn 1 Wasteland from our opponent. But I'm being far too lazy to wait for that. Luckily, our opponent just gets into an island on turn 1. We will grab ourselves a Wood Elves here. And just in case we don't want to go for Harrow, I won't grab a basic. We'll just grab... should we? Yeah, we'll just go for the Tropical Island. I was thinking of going for a basic land so that we can sacrifice it to Harrow, but I've got the feeling that our opponent's going to have counter magic on turn 2 because, typically speaking, Narset will control the early game on her way up to coming into play. But it's just a Talisman of Progress apparently, so that might give us free reign to get into the Harrow. Also gives us free reign to get into our commander, so let's go for that instead whilst we think our opponent's shields are down. And then we might as well peck our opponent for 1 and pass the turn. We don't have any landfall to make use of with the Harrow, unfortunately. But in a Jeskai deck, our opponent's ramp is going to be pretty reliant on things like talismans and mana rocks in general, so Bane of Progress will be good to get into. It won't benefit from the double triggers, but... well, there we are, Wrath of God. So that very much tempts me to get into the Bane of Progress. But I think instead what we might concentrate on doing is... well, there's a Demonic Tutor. Let's grab a basic from our library. And then, like I said, I think I'd be tempted to go for the Harrow here, just because we go up a land that way. And I don't really want to risk running a Harrow up against untapped mana, because all it means is that we pay 3 mana to sacrifice a land, and then if this gets countered, then obviously that feels pretty bad. And we'll grab a Swamp and a Forest. Grabbing the Swamp just in case our opponent gets rid of Urborg. And then I think we can go for a Demonic Tutor into something. Not sure what we're grabbing though. Why don't we attempt to go for something like a Prime Time? Yeah, we'll try and grab Primeval Titan and see if we can get that going. It might be that we want to cast the Bane of Progress next turn if our opponent gets another rock down. Not going to F6 through this turn because we do have counter magic mana held up. We want to show our opponent that we might have it. They may let a Primeval Titan go if they think we've got counter magic for their Narset. They might want to counter our counter. They're struggling on red, luckily for us. A Gush, yeah, hard casting a Gush means that they are desperate to get into their red mana, which I can't say I feel all that bad about against a Narset player. Typically Narset is a bunch of extra turns. How many lands have we got for Field of the Dead? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th one will be Field of the Dead, so that will actually trigger. So we will go for our Primeval Titan here, and it does land. So we'll start ramping like crazy here. Let's go for a Gaia's Cradle and a Field of the Dead. Typically what we go for with the prime time. Field of the Dead, a really good new one from M20. And I've put it in all of my Lands Matter decks, I think. Was making use of it in Tatyova the other day. And I'd love to get off a big Villainous Wealth with the Gaia's Cradle being in play, but I'm not sure how much use it's going to be against a Narset player. Yeah, looks like this is a more budget Narset player, so shouldn't necessarily have been too fearful of it. But it's difficult to know unless you memorise everyone's usernames, the types of players that people are. Alright, well there's a Sol Ring. Let's just go in for our Primeval Titan and zombies. Could have gotten down Yarok first to get even more Field of the Dead triggers, but I'm thinking I might go for either a Villainous Wealth or a Regal Force. We'll grab Cabal Coffers and Reliquary Tower, giving us an unlimited hand size, a couple more zombies, and even more black mana next turn. And then I imagine our opponent's just taking this. Then we'll tap down the Field of the Dead for a Sol Ring. And does this bring something into play untapped? No, you just put it onto the battlefield. So that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and yeah, I think a Cross and Grip on the Talisman is alright. That way they have to make a land drop next turn. They'll get red from this if they've got shocks and things like that in the deck. Then we will replay our Yarok. And we'll just leave the turn like that. Looks like our opponent has counter magic. There we go. I don't know how much use they'll make out of that colourless mana, but we'll soon find out. Yep, they do have dual lands in the deck, so can't be that much of a budget deck. These are nowhere near as expensive online as they are in paper. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds for these in paper, or dollars, whatever currency you're in. But on Magic Online, you're looking at between 10 and 20 US dollars, I think they are. Well, they used to be anyway. Alright, yeah, finally fixing the mana now. Then able to use a Crystal Ball for the Scry. But I don't think our opponent's quite in this game. Oh, did they get into an extra turn card? Oh, I didn't see the Nexus of Fate go off there, so yeah, that is what they cast that turn. Didn't realise they'd gotten into an extra turn. I think I mentioned it before, but Narset Enlightened Master is typically just a bunch of land destruction and extra turns. A Scry 2 from the Crystal Ball. Oh, and I think I also said that the Villainous Wealth wouldn't be all that useful in a Narset deck. I thought that we'd only be able to cast permanents with this for some reason, but it's actually... you can cast any number of non-land cards, so we can actually get a bunch of extra turns ourselves with that. It is a May ability, isn't it? You may cast them, yes, so we don't have to cast Armageddon if we don't want to. A Frantic Salvage. Put any number of artifacts on top of your library and draw, so they're getting back into their Talisman of Progress. They may well just play that this turn. Okay, we've got a land to make there. So that will get us into a zombie. Oh, how much does Yarok cost actually? Maybe we should have waited on that. Yeah, we've got plenty of black mana from the Cabal Coffers, so should have waited on the landfall there. Because we could have gotten an additional zombie. Don't think it really matters. Get our Yarok back down. And then... what do we want to do? I think it's a good idea to Regal Force. We'll draw a card for each green creature we control. We'll control 3 green creatures here, which means 6 cards in hand, and we do have an unlimited hand size. Yeah, we could have Vampiric Tutored in response there, but I don't really know what I want, to be honest. Alright, let's put down the Search for Azcanta so that we can start getting some filtering. And then we'll go in for a reasonably sized Villainous Wealth. Certainly not the biggest one I've ever cast. X is 6 in this case. Alright, a Supreme Verdict is good to get rid of. A Pact of Negation is as well. Let's just cast the Teferi. Yeah, getting rid of these cards is good. We'll not bother casting those. They just go into exile, I think. Yeah, exiling those 2 cards. Then we can untap Cabal Coffers, Gaia's Cradle, the Sol Ring, and a blue source. Yeah, we'll just untap the Tropical Island. Now let's swing in at our opponent. We'll use Primeval Titan's ability. And let's go for the Dark Depths. We do have Thespian Stage in hand, so it might be worth getting down the Azusa. We'll go for Wasteland as well. Might have been worth, actually, us waiting on the Teferi untap, because we could have untapped the Wasteland and gotten rid of the Plateau, but don't think it really matters. Let's get down the Azusa, and then we can play the Thespian Stage, getting some more zombies. Thespian Stage can become a copy of the Dark Depths, but it won't have the counters on it, so we'll end up with a 2020 indestructible flying Marit Lage. Might as well throw out a forest as well. And then that mana can fizzle, I think. We're not really bothered about doing much else. Just a case of seeing if our opponent has a board wipe now. Down comes Ugin the Spirit Dragon. That is a board wipe. But we can still get in for the Marit Lage token at the end of the turn, so not really worried about that. We've also got a tutor and card draw on top. And they have to go for the -7 in order to get rid of the Regal Force. So that exiles all of our stuff. And then at the end of the turn we will go for Thespian Stage, becoming a copy of the Dark Depths. And then we have to choose which one we want to keep. We want the one with no counters on it. The other one will die to the legendary rule. And our opponent sees what we're doing. We're about to get a 2020, and then when we untap, it will not have Summoning Sickness, and we can whack our opponent down to below 0. Just managed to take advantage of Narset's mana screw there, and typically they like to control the early game, but didn't see much in the way of counter magic. It was only really the mana drain that we saw there, so yeah, a pretty lucky encounter against Narset Enlightened Master. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.